When I started to look into doing a podcast, I knew I had a lot to share and say, and I wanted to do it in an audio format. I was a little intimidated, not going to lie, about how I was going to go about recording and editing and distributing and all those things because technology is not my strong suit. Naturally, I can learn things. And so when I started to take webinars and ask questions on Facebook and other platforms, I decided that Anchor was the best way to go. It's been a bit of a one-stop shop for me. I can record all of my episodes, I can edit them. It's been really nice because it's free. And when I started to do a podcast, it was, okay, how am I going to rebuild my practice? I had to close my practice down because of COVID, federal mandate. So how was I going to rebuild things? How was I going to give myself something to do? Because this defines me. What I do, it defines me. So I really needed an outlet, and the budget was like nothing. So having this free option has been great. I am recording on my laptop, but I can also record on my phone if I decide that's a way to go, or maybe I don't have my laptop on me. And so that's pretty exciting to know I can do it from there too. They also take and distribute to various apps for people to listen on, which again, that is taking one stressor away from me so I can focus on my content. And if it's something you'd like to do, if you have something you'd like to say, I can't recommend it enough for somebody who's a newbie and starting out. And I feel like even if I wasn't, new at this, it's been something I've been doing for a while, I would still like this platform because of the ease of everything. So if it is something you'd like to look into, you can download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm. That's ANCHOR.fm to get started. Welcome to the Infinite Dance. I'm your host, Carrie Errata. Welcome back to any of you that have been listening for the past 8 episodes. Thank you so much for all of your support. It means the world to me. And if this is your first Infinite Dance episode, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you for coming around and giving me a listen. Today's episode is going to be about a dark night of the soul and shadow work that naturally just comes from going through a dark night of the soul. So when you think about our current global situation, we are in a collective dark night of the soul, which, oh my goodness, how do we deal with everything when everybody's at their edge? Everybody's has anxiety with various things or is lost as to what exactly to do. Right? Because if, you have a friend or you've been somebody that's gone through a dark night of the soul, and your friend is not, well, then you kind of have that support of, hey, I'm not in this space right now. I can at least be a little bit of a comfort, diversion, to not be stuck in those feelings 24/7. Even though you do need to go through all of the feelings, having a little break is very much needed. So for personal dark nights of the soul, and we'll get into the collective too here, but with personal dark nights of the soul, it sometimes will happen and you're not sure it's actually happening, but maybe you've had a string of events, that have come before that are most likely triggers, breaking up from a long-term relationship, losing a position, getting fired, or even let go, losing a loved one. And it could be years after that you have what is termed as a dark night of the soul. And I'll kind of get into that terminology too. But, having it come on and what's it going to be like, you just don't know. Personally, the last one I went through, which I'm still obviously feeling tendrils of because we're all, again, collectively going through a dark night. But my own personal one came in 2018, and it started and I didn't realize it was happening, but I decided to take myself on a solo camping trip. And this is when I was living in Colorado. And I chose a place where, of course, I could swim. I needed a lake where I could swim. And this one had kayaking and paddleboarding. And you could either car camp, RV camp, any of those. And so I actually chose a spot where I could hook up a laptop because I went there to write. I was like, I'll write, I'll swim, I'll float, I'll kayak, I'll, hike. So I could, I knew I was going to process stuff, but I wasn't calling it a dark night of the soul at the time. So I, get there and it's fine. And I start to get everything set up, and I've camped a lot throughout my life. So getting set up is no problem. Even popping a tent up, like a shade tent. It's not the easiest by yourself, but it can be done. I've done it many a times myself, and I need shade because I burn really easily in the sun. So I get everything set up and, have a nice couple of days. And I think it was the third day I was there. I planned on taking out a kayak on this lake and renting. I didn't own one. So I gave myself that. And so I went down to rent the kayak, and it was a little bit windy of a day, and I wasn't feeling super great. I wasn't feeling terrible, but I don't know. I wasn't feeling super revved to do this. And I love being on the water, in the water, all that. So I rent the kayak and I take it out, and I'm a little ways past the buoys. And again, it's windy, and it's a little windier than I personally love, but I thought, you know what? I can rent it throughout the whole time. She's like, yeah, if you don't feel like being out there the whole time, just let me know. You can bring it back and you can, just take it out the next day. So I did that. I brought it back and I said, you know what? I'm just not feeling it today. Can we try to do it tomorrow? No problem. Great. So then I go back to my campsite and I get myself ready to go down by the water, and I bring my raft and I bring my notebook and a lunch. And I thought, okay, this will be nice. I'll just float and whatever. And so I'm doing my thing, and I don't know, maybe I'd been there for maybe an hour or two. And all of a sudden my stomach turned, and I was like, oh no. And I'm camping at a place that's not out in the middle of nowhere. There's, bathrooms, and I had people camping next to me and whatnot. But I suddenly had to go to the bathroom like you would not believe. So I get up and start to hike it towards those bathrooms. And they're not far in relation to something being far, but when you suddenly feel your stomach turn and you have got to go, it was like miles. So I am booking it to this bathroom, and it's the middle of the day. It's probably 1:00 or something in the afternoon, and I have exploding diarrhea in this bathroom. Yay me. So that felt really good, and was like, okay, what is going on? Great way to spend my solo camping trip, in the bathroom, having to clean the space up and myself. And luckily, most of the people that were camping in the area had RVs. So when I see that, I believe they have toilets on their vehicle. So, nobody came in, thank goodness. It was just me in there. But I thought, oh, this is awful, right? Who wants to have this happen? So I get everything cleaned up, and I think there was not a shower, but I don't know. I somehow cleaned myself up and went back down by the water and just sat there. And I think I got maybe, I don't know. I don't even know what exactly I did. But to make myself feel more grounded, I did start writing. I just started writing and I couldn't stop. And it was like, that auto writing, it was just pouring out of me, all these emotions. I was crying. I was admitting things to myself that I kind of knew, but I didn't, or I wasn't allowing myself to fully explore. And here I am getting them down on paper. And so it was amazing to have that space to do that. But physically to have the bathroom incident and, feeling uncomfortable about that was like, oh my God, what is going on? So I think that was, like I said, like the third day. And this was like a 5-day camping trip, 5 nights. And so I continued just to, camp. I was fine after that. The one time, I mean, I wasn't sick. I did have my cycle, so that could have had a lot to do with it too. For all my women out there, you know how that can just throw things off and make our chakra 2 and chakra 1 really pressurized. So I go about the rest of the camping trip, and it was kind of a bummer because the place that I camped at, it was Stagecoach State Park in Steamboat Springs. And the water, as beautiful as it was, had this strange blue, like turquoise, like bright turquoise blue ring around it. And I was like, what is this? What is this ring? What is that all about? And I had asked the gal that I'd rented the kayak from, and she's like, oh yeah, it's some algae that comes off of the plants because there was some kind of interaction with like a human interaction. And I thought, oh, bummer. Like it's some kind of gross algae. And it was funny because I really didn't want to get in the water a ton, which is not like me. If anybody knows me, I'm, hashtag super soaker. Like I will soak until I'm just completely pruned up. It doesn't matter. I love being in, especially natural bodies of water. So it was really odd that I didn't want to get in, but I naturally, instinctively did not want to be in that water. And probably because of that, beautiful looking turquoise blue ring around this lake, but I did not want to be in it for very long. So here I am in this, great setting, having this solo camping trip. This was like my vacation too. And it ended up being, a lot. I mean, the release was good, right? But it was kind of like the opening of the floodgates, so to speak, right? Thank goodness it was the only physical one like that. I mean, there's been lots of tears since then. But so when I get back home, so after this camping trip, and the rest was pretty, what you would expect with camping, just, hanging out, built a fire every night. I'm actually really good at building a campfire. And I got home, and I think the day after I got home, I could not get out of bed. I was just so, I would call it depressed. I just didn't want to move. I just felt stuck. And I didn't know what was happening to me at the time. And again, before all this happened, I think the 2.5 years before, was it 2.5, about 2 years, broken up with a long-term partnership, and I had been dating. So I had taken I don't know, after that breakup, maybe a year, and did some traveling and found a place and started to kind of get my roots and everything, and I decided to start to date. And I online dated, and I met some decent folks. I mean, I even met my soulmate, who wasn't, who or what I thought they would be showing up as. And I even called this soulmate a soul turd, which Not a good idea. I quickly stopped doing that. But again, I was at the end of that dating, I was getting all these crappy experiences, and I really feel like that's the universe saying, okay, this isn't the space you're supposed to be in. Yes, it'll be great to connect with somebody again, but this just is not the time or the space to do it in, right? Because we all know lots of people who have met their husband or wife on social media. So it's not the vehicle, okay? It was just the time. And, being behind a keyboard and being as life as it is, there was just all of these things that weren't lining up, and it just didn't feel good. And then I have the solo camping trip to kind of release myself from all of that. And, I essentially, it was the beginning of, well, okay, let's release all that past garbage, right? In this really intense way that, like, you wouldn't want anybody else to go through. Like, I'm not going to, but if I didn't go through all these things, if I didn't have all this, writing, and then this depression, and the depression that continued, but it wasn't like, I knew I wasn't depressed. I wasn't telling myself I'm terrible. It wasn't my thought forms, right? It was past stuff. Like, it wasn't current stuff. And I was very aware of that. Even though it was hard to get through it. Because here we get into now, symptoms of a dark night of the soul. Your constructs of your truth are breaking down. Okay, who am I? Okay, I'm not in a partnership anymore. I'm a solo person. Here I am doing all these things. But, that me is now not working as a solo person that I knew. So, okay, now what are the stories that are going to come in that you're going to tell yourself? Because you feel confused about what's the best way to go. Okay, where should I even be right now? Like, I know it's me, so where should I put myself to figure all of this out? You feel lost and lonely. And that's very much how we're feeling now as a collective, too. I mean, we're in isolation. So there's definitely a huge feeling of loneliness and lost if you've had to close down your business or close for a certain amount of time, or maybe you had to stop your career and be a teacher to your kids now because they're at home. Your definition of who you are is now completely changed. So that gives a feeling of who am I? I'm kind of lost right now. So we're all in that. And the things that used to bring us joy, we can't even do them, a lot of them right now. So then you're figuring out, okay, how am I going to bring myself joy now? What are the tasks, or what are the fun things I'm going to do? Because maybe I would meet up with a friend at a coffee shop, or, for a happy hour, but you can't do that because that has not been a part of society now for a while, right? So we're refiguring it out. And I know different parts of the country are in different areas with this, but again, whether you have gone through this for the whole year now that we're at, or a portion of it, it was still a huge shift in what your reality was. I mean, seriously, I've had some people say, Dark Night of the Soul is like an existential crisis. Well, yeah, your whole human existence of what where you can go, how you can be and interact is been completely turned upside down. So, and memories of past lives and or childhood are coming up rapidly right now. And if you're finding yourself in a space where you're like, okay, why am I thinking of this? It needs to be processed in your state you're in now, in how you are now. Because I really believe a dark night of the soul should be termed a dark night of the ego, because we really are letting go of our ego. And as much as we do need ego to define our personality and who we are too, it can't be where we stem from. It can't be the base. Okay? It's a part of it. It's a part of who we are, but should never be the base. And that's why we're having this dark night of the soul collectively, because we were coming from ego so much and it wasn't benefiting anybody. Even if somebody, we keep saying if you've made it, it always means financially. So that's all ego, right? So how do we combine those so that our base is coming from both, and the making it is having all of the things, not just, one defines, oh yeah, they're fine. They have a house, they have a car, they have a, whatever it is that's tangible, right? Earthly. So if we can actually get back to not realizing our soul is suffering, because our soul wants what's best for us. And when you do go through a dark night of your own personal soul and you're getting rid of that part of your ego that you had stepped into in order to make sense of your world, then it's that ego that's falling away. It's that ego death. And that's a good thing, because if you were stepping into ego, why is this happening to me? You know, this is interesting, but I'm getting shown like your ego and your personal power. Your personal power is in your spiritual body, your soul. And when your boundaries are being pushed, right? A lot of times when we go through a dark night of soul, we've gone through a tough situation, say a tough relationship, and you're coming through with your boundaries were weaker. You didn't have as much boundaries of what you would tolerate, right? Um, and so that would go through all of your relationships, not just like the one you were in. So say it was a primary relationship, a romantic relationship, and your boundaries were lowered. It wasn't a great relationship. And, your ego's coming through to help you, right? During that. But when you get out of it, you don't need that part of your ego to come in anymore. You need your personal power back, right? So you need to step back into your strength. And that can be really hard to get there when we've been told, or when we see society coming from an ego first. How do you look? How much money do you have? All these superficial things, as opposed to how are you feeling? How are you doing? Are you feeling supported? Are you feeling gratitude? All the different feelings. And when you begin to see things from your soul's point of view first, it's a challenge, but to get there, to let that ego down, right? And that's why a lot of times when you go through a dark night of the soul, or a big shift, you can call it a big shift, dark night of the ego, we start to see certain other relationships fall away. So other friendships don't fall in alignment anymore, because you're putting up boundaries that they're not used to. They might say, hey, want to go do this? And you're like, no, actually, I don't want to do that right now. And you might find them pushing, well, come on, why don't you want to do this? Well, because I said no. I mean, that's perfect enough reason. Nope, don't feel like doing something, but you're pushed. I'm tired. Well, why are you tired? Well, I don't want to tell you. I'm tired. So, but you'll find the boundaries being pushed, and then maybe those relationships don't work anymore, and that's okay. It doesn't mean anybody's bad. It just means there's a shift in the dynamic. There's a shift that has to happen, because when you transition out of ego first mentality, you're going to come to what your soul needs, right? Because your soul always knows what you want. Your soul always has your highest benefit as the first thing to go forward with. So other symptoms that come through, you could find yourself having anxiety and panic attacks also. And gosh, those are not fun. Um, but again, a sign of, okay, what's making you feel that way? We can really kind of start to get into what is making me feel that anxiety? What is making me feel that panicky feeling? And you can start to see where it's mimicking in other areas. And then crying uncontrollably too. I mean, if you haven't broken down crying at the DMV, are you really living? That happened to me recently. And I feel like, fine, I cried. It didn't last for very long, but I was just like, what else am I going to do? This is frustrating, right? But again, trying to maneuver all of this within society and with each other and with ourselves, it can be a lot. So when you've gone through the dark night of the soul, and you're going through the ego death, right? And setting better boundaries, coming back into your personal power, you're going to do shadow work. You hear people say, what is shadow work? The shadow side. It's just the places that scare you. The places that scare you, that are tough, they're going to come up to surface. And you're going to acknowledge those places, and that's okay. It needs to be done. Just acknowledge, where's that anxiety coming from? Oh, it's that same feeling I get here. Maybe you start to work out and you start to get that same pulse rate when you feel anxiety. Oh, maybe that's why I wasn't working out as much, right? Doing cardio, because I was getting that same feeling. Okay, so how are we gonna start to look into that, right? Because we start to talk ourselves out of, well, why should I even do this shadow work? It's going to be tough, right? And we start to project. We start to rationalize why we shouldn't go there. Oh my God, I don't have time or whatever. Well, maybe you do. Or maybe you won't have any choice like I did, and you just have an explosive solo camping trip and come home and are stuck in bed for 3 days after a camping trip. And social masks are also a way that people will start to, or let me avoid this shadow work. I'll just put on that everything's happy and everything's good all the time. Well, it's not good all the time, and it's okay if it's not. It's okay if it's not good all the time. Anxiety, heartbreak, and tenderness mark the in-between state. It's the kind of place we usually want to avoid. And that is a quote from one of my favorite authors and teachers, Pema Chodron, from her book, The Places That Scare You. And if you haven't read that, I definitely highly recommend it. She is a Buddhist monk, but you don't have to be Buddhist. Don't consider myself Buddhist, but I enjoy the teachings. And this book is very easy to read. Doesn't matter what your background is. And so when we work with those places that scare us, we kind of have no choice but being brought back to our place of personal power. Because what are you left with? It's you, right? It's you and what you're going through. Because when we are being threatened and our personal power is being taken away, it really can mess with your head. But again, the dark night of the soul ego is going to be a dark night of not knowing where those boundaries are, right? So it's almost like it's dark, so you could kind of start to see the light again. New, okay? you need to see those boundaries. You need to see your personal power. You need to see yourself standing in that power and shining brightly so you can share your gifts. So dark night of the soul and shadow work. I've had 3 now: personal dark nights of the soul, ego, death. And I really feel like I can step back and observe more. And we're getting a lot of help right now because our timelines are so merged, right? So this world we know and the one beyond that we see with our third eye, they're so merged that we can start to see those quicker, which is really nice. And when you start to sit back and observe things, including your own interactions and reactions, then you can start to make sense of how you're going to be with it all. And so in the bonus episode this week, we're going to go into more tips on shadow work. I have a little tutorial of ways to go about things. So that will be very informative for you. And that's in my Patreon. So patreon.com/the infinite dance. If you would like to explore where you're at with all this more, if you'd like a little more guidance, I do private readings. You can book those at ancientbodyworks.co. I also have a private Facebook page called The Infinite Dance. Please go ahead and let me know if you'd like to be a part of that. I'd love to have you join. We go over things we've gone through in the episodes and also just what's going on in life. It's a safe space to share. And I also have Wednesday morning guided Akashic meditations, 9:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Zoom. I'll have links to that in the information. And continue to peel back the layers and continue to ask yourselves and others, may I have this dance?